Listen up, get ready, I'm not gonna take no more. There's a revolution, a revelation going on in my soul. Buckle up, get ready, we're not gonna sit back.
Hello and welcome all you friends and neighbors. It's time for another edition of the Live from the Heartland show. This is our International Women's Day show. We're recording it on March 8th. It's a Wednesday, and this is number 143 since the beginning of the pandemic. And we do welcome all you comrades, sisters, and brothers. Today we have a couple of old pals, two women who have taught me a lot and I have great respect for, the one and only Marilyn Katz and the one and only Robyn Gabel. So we're going to hear from them in a little bit. First, a little bit of chatter. I want to thank Katie Hogan for taking over the reins last week. I had COVID when I came back from my granddaughter's volleyball in D.C. I was laying up in my room for a lot of days, almost 2 weeks, but Katie took over the show. I got to work on framing photos for my show that opens on Friday night, which is last night if you're watching this on Saturday morning. I'm back in the swimming pool. I'm feeling pretty good, and just looking forward to all the activities that are coming, including a mayoral election and some runoffs around town in the aldermanic election here in Chicago. On the election front, we have a few more days of counting mail-in ballots, and then the aldermanic elections will be set. We're going to talk about those in a little bit, I think, with our guests. We have two mayoral candidates who between them received some 53% of a 30% voter turnout. Not much of a mandate there so far, Chicago? On another election front, the United Auto Workers, this is our labor section. The presidential race now hinges on challenged ballots. The reform candidate, Shawn Fain, F-A-I-N, there was a White Sox player named Fain way back. Anyhow, he leads the incumbent UAW, United Auto Workers president, Ray Curry, by just 645 votes, with 1,608 challenged ballots yet to be resolved. If you're paying attention to labor and the United Auto Workers, I'm going to call your attention to a guest we had in the last several months, Carol Travis. She was a classmate of mine up at Lake Forest College in the first 4 years of the 1960s. And her dad was Fighting Bob Travis, who led the Flint sit-down strike. There is a really good book on that called Midnight in Vehicle City by Edward McClellan of Rogers Park, where the show originates. There's also another book called Sit Down, but it always captured my imagination. And, as a kid growing up and following labor unions as I got a little bit older, the struggles of United Auto Workers and the sit-down strikes in Flint are really important and memorable. Also on the labor front, we haven't talked about it lately, but we've got Starbucks founder and CEO Howard Schultz is no longer refusing to testify before the Senate Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee over the company's labor practices. The committee chair, our leader in a lot of ways, Bernie Sanders, announced earlier that he's happy Schultz finally agreed to appear. They're investigating complaints that Starbucks has violated federal laws under Schultz's leadership. Sanders wrote, quote, "I look forward to hearing from him as to when he intends to end his illegal anti-union activities and begin signing fair first contracts with the unions." A federal judge also says that Starbucks has violated workers' rights hundreds of times, and he has ordered Starbucks to reinstate 7 workers fired during a unionization campaign in Buffalo. Over at our favorite news channels, that would be Fox, no, I'm kidding, trying to anyhow, there is a lot of turmoil. Rupert Murdoch has admitted that Biden won and that his personalities denied it on air. Dominion Voting has a suit against Fox, and there's all these revelations coming about Fox's behavior. And Tucker Carlson, who is not a very nice guy, he is bad-mouthing Trump, but at the same time, he's pushing lies and distortion. Speaker of the House, McCarthy, gave him, that would be Carlson, thousands of hours of footage from the January 6th testimonies, and Carlson is selectively choosing what he wants to present. Just a walk in the park, it was. Not true. Here at home, in the 49th Ward, our Alderwoman Maria Hadden cruised to a victory with 73% of the vote and has turned her campaign office into a Brandon Johnson campaign headquarters for the 49th Ward. Hopefully, a lot of votes will go Johnson's way. And if you're looking for a Brandon Johnson sign, you would go to that office at the corner of Greenview and Morse. Well, it's 2 doors to the west, but it's right there. We've been doing this little segment called Comebacks, whether it be the High Ridge Y or the metro station over on Lunt Avenue. Last week, Katie threw in a comeback by the candidate Vallis for the mayor with a little bit of sarcasm. But we are in need of a comeback around our wonderful 400 Theater on Sheridan Road here in Rogers Park. Since the pandemic and they reopened, only about half the customers have returned. And it really is a wonderful old school movie theater that I don't know what the status is about them closing and looking for new tenants. The person who had brought this to my attention, that would be Carly, a friend of Hal's there, and a friend of mine. She is very concerned about it. And I told her to reach out to them. And if they want to come on a show and talk about the theater, we'd love to have them. Otherwise, go see a movie there. That would be a good idea. A little take note, on Saturday night at midnight, we move our clocks an hour forward, spring forward. So we're going to get an hour more of sunlight at night. In the mornings, it'll still be a little bit dark. On the gun front, I saw a report by the Associated Press that a Missouri law banning police from enforcing federal gun laws is ruled unconstitutional and void this past Tuesday by a federal judge. That's good news. Hopefully that will hold. On the sports front, we're in the throes of the Big Ten playoffs, both men and women. March Madness will be upon us before you know it. All us, the baseball fans, opening day is March 30th. The Sox are going to be in Houston and the Cubs will be at home. The Bulls seem to be stumbling. We had we had 3 wins in a row, and then we've had a couple of losses. The Bears appear to be out of here, and I would love if that didn't happen and we kept Arlington Heights as a beautiful racetrack, but it's not looking real good. The Bears could have built a new stadium way down by the old steel mills, could have stayed in Chicago. This is not a good thing for them to do, even though a lot of NFL teams play. They have the name of a city like San Francisco, but don't play in San Francisco. Also on the sports front, 20 teams are starting this week in the World Baseball Classic, and that has some really heavy hitters and pitchers from major league teams, from Venezuela, from Cuba, from around the world, as well as from the States. So if you're looking for some good baseball, check that out. In memoriam, Judy Heumann, that would be Heumann, a renowned activist who helped secure legislation protecting the rights of disabled people, has died at age 75. She is the mother of disability rights movement. And you think about it, when you walk around our city and here in Chicago, there are curb cuts. So if you're in a wheelchair, you can, just get down there. I remember thinking about that when I was in the Soviet Union in '89. It could have been 90. It was around that time. And you didn't see handicapped people and you didn't see any curb cuts. It was a stark contrast to what was going on here. Okay, that's it for the banner. We're going to come back in a few minutes with, or after a little bit of musical break, with our first guest, our friend Marilyn Katz. So stay tuned here on the left end of your dial, and live from the Heartland, we'll be right back.
As we go marching, marching, we battle too for men, for they are women's children, and we mother them again. Our life shall not be sweated from birth until life closes. Hearts starve as well as bodies. Give us bread, but give us wrong.
Well, it brings me great pleasure on International Women's Day, March 8th, when we're recording this for the week of the 11th of March, to bring on an old pal, an old friend, someone who I have great respect for. I first met her in a park in Evanston when she was getting out of Northwestern, and we were up there recruiting to work in Uptown for Joint Community Union, Marilyn Katz. And Marilyn has been so gracious as to agree to come on today. And she has a special event that is taking place that we're going to talk about first. And we're going to talk a little bit about International Women's Day and politics here in the city. So, Marilyn, you helped to found Chicago Women Take Action. It's a group you helped spawn. It's hosted many forums, most recently 9 candidates for mayor. And you're about to host another one. Talk a little bit about Chicago Women Take Action.
I have to go back to go forward. So, Michael, when you and I hate to name Tom Mosier were recruiting, I never turned back. And actually, on this National Women's Day, it was, in fact, at Join where I began to understand the position of women. Because, if you remember, we were organizing welfare women, and welfare was a women's problem. The fact that women couldn't work or they were paid less, it was very clear that poverty was a women's issue. So yes, and that has continued to be a thread of organizing through my life. Chicago women.
I do remember a lot of times we would take women to the welfare office, and I remember we had demonstrations, and we worked with Kenwood Oakland Community Organization and Latin American Defense Organization, and the women
TWO
coming on us.
Right, and TWO, and you remember in that community where there were a number of very strong Black women on welfare, but also a number of Appalachian women. For the Appalachian women, birth control was a major issue because the men actually used to beat up the Vista workers who were trying to convince women to take birth control. It was very, so my rooting in women's issues goes back to really to Join. So now, this weekend, we have an alliance of 44 women's groups across Chicago, an alliance that started in 2014 and has grown. But you know what, Michael? Our agenda is very much the same as it was at Join. Economic security for women and their families, healthcare, decent housing, clean air, clean food, constraint of the cops. Really, I mean, for better or worse, those issues have not changed over 50 years, for better or worse. However, I really do, this is such an exciting group, much more diverse than any other group in Chicago, because it is an amalgamation of Black Lives Matter and the Women's March and Chicago Women Take Action. And there's a real desire both to have the two candidates answer the questions about our agenda and what they would do, but also to really think about, with a new mayor in City Hall, how do we take that agenda forward and give it legs? And because another caper that you and I did together, we haven't had a women's commission since Harold Washington. So we would like to see that, where you're really addressing wage issues, issues of, a disparate scale for service workers and cafes, which you know very well, versus other workers, et cetera.
Was that something that Harold created, and why did it go away? Why didn't anyone else pick up on it?
Well, there was this real jerk who was, I can't remember his name, and Clarence something or another. There's a lot of trouble with Clarences in the world, and apparently, and he decided to dissolve it, and that there would just be a human rights commission because all issues were the same. But I really want people Saturday to come to Chicago Temple at Clark and Washington, and you can get those tickets by going to Chicago Women Take Action Alliance.org on the web, and you can find the flyer and get your ticket, or you can go to Eventbrite.
What time is it, Marilyn?
It's from 2 to 4.
That's good, because this show airs on Saturday morning. It gets streamed. It'll be on YouTube the night before. I don't know how many people are going to come because of it, but hopefully a few will take the opportunity.
I think it's really important. And And if you can't get there, and if there are no more tickets left, it's also being streamed, broadcast live on CAN TV, and also their Facebook page and on their YouTube channel. So there's a lot, and we're, it's 2 hours with these men, and we're going to grill them on the 10-point agenda of the Women's Alliance, which you can also find at the website, and with two great moderators, Cheryl Corley of NPR and Joan Esposito. So,
Nice.
we're very excited. And, actually, both men deserve a lot of examination.
They do.
As all men do.
We'll talk about the mayoral race in just a minute. I want to go a little bit into International Women's Day. We're in a situation where we've accomplished a lot of things and it increased people's rights over the years, and now it's all under fire. I was listening to Democracy Now! This morning, and there was a woman on and gave a very detailed, very rapid history of International Women's Day that talked about its socialist and communist roots, and how it was in 1967 that a group called Chicago Circle, which I don't remember, really put it together. And then later it became, the UN put it through and it became a national day, kind of. Anything you want to share about International Women's Day and the need for people to be aware of the oppression of women more now than perhaps ever?
So I think, I don't remember Chicago Circle, but that was really the moment at which the second wave feminist and feminist socialist movement really emerged. If you remember, that's when we created Women's International Terrorist Conspiracy from Hell, which that was really fun. And the year later, the Chicago Women's Union. But, this goes back to internationally, Rosa Luxemburg and the women in Germany and Russia, and here to things like the shirtwaist fire, to the struggles of labor women in New York, where hundreds of women were killed in the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire, and to Lowell, Massachusetts, where the song "Bread and Roses" comes from. But for a long time, it's kind of like Martin Luther King. There was a co-optation of International Women's Day, and it became more like everybody sends a greeting for International Women's Day. But it becomes more important than ever with what's going on in the world, and the socialist roots of it, and the and male supremacy and white supremacy that were encoded and caused the women to rebel really need to be examined. And I think in some ways, luckily, or not luckily, finally, those things are. And I know it's been a terrible year. It's been a really terrible year with the Supreme Court decision, terrible year of the killings in Iran. At the same time, women are resisting. I was just reading about women in Iran yesterday. There has been more and more vocal and more visible and more militant activity among women in Iran than anybody else. And we even have, what the Supreme Court did, and which is when they said all the states' response could ban abortion, was really a catalyst for women's activity. I know everybody said, "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God," but in fact, it was a wake-up call. And women, as we have for thousands of years, we're not going to just lie down and die.
Right.
Or, as we saw in unlikely places, Tennessee, Kansas, and now DeSantis may have really overstepped the line by saying that he was going to ban all abortions after 6 weeks. Well, Florida is not my favorite state, but I do not believe that the women of Florida, as diverse as they are going to stand for that.
Yeah, we're waiting for some real transformation in what's going on in Florida. I mean, it really has he's been on a roll and it's pretty negative.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, I would totally admit these are very scary times. And DeSantis, it goes back to 2010 when, our good friends in the White House were focused on Congress. They forgot about the states. And that year, 39 state legislatures became Republicans. And that is a legacy that is killing us today, literally, as well as figuratively.
Well, yeah, we have a lot of work to do. Let's just say also in Iraq and particularly in Afghanistan, women are really standing up, and they have some really adverse conditions. And I did learn that in El Salvador, they have banned abortions. So I imagine there's some issues there. We have a big mayoral runoff. And as I pointed out in the opening, only 30% of the people in Chicago eligible to vote turned out for this. We could be getting into a pretty heavy predicament here, depending on who wins. Let's talk about the mayoral race. We have Brandon Johnson, who didn't get over 40% in any ward, versus Paul Vallis, who pretty much failed everywhere he went. What's your take on this runoff election? And if you were a betting woman, which I know you have done a little bit in your life, where are you at on it?
You know, it's funny you should say that, because I was ready with bets on the primary, knew that Paul would come in first, partly because of the fragmentation of the Black vote, and partly because, you know, the our friend Chuy Garcia, who we've known for years, ran less than a robust campaign.
Yeah, he got in late, and the campaign he didn't have it this time.
Right. So this time, I really don't know. You know, both candidates have big challenges. On the one hand, you know, Paul has the noose of Catanzara around his neck and the police union.
That's the fraternal order of the police, and the head of that is a Catanzara, who is a Trump supporter and a pretty right-wing guy.
Yeah, totally terrible guy. And on the other hand, Brandon has real challenges too, a lot of his own making. So of the one, I think, you know, what I've heard from people is how does he, well, I'll go to that later. His more taxes and less police is not something that it is a problem for him. Particularly when you look at the voting patterns of the primary, where the voters were older, more conservative, and half the voters, not half, you know, and second after Brandon was Lori. So you have a more conservative, older base. And then both men have this very weird problem. So the two most visible unions in the city are the police and the teachers. And who's ever in City Hall has to negotiate with those unions on behalf of the whole city. And I'm really curious to see what either of them says about, you know, Paul, you've been a consultant to the police union. How would you, as mayor, negotiate with people that you've advised on negotiations? And Brandon, you, who've been an organizer for the union for the last, 30 years, 20 years? How would you separate yourself from the negotiating table where you sat on the other side 2 years ago? So I think that's going to be a challenge for both of them. And I think the play is on the lakefront. I think who gets that vote in 42, 43, 44, 46, 48, as well as who brings out their troops, 49 as well.
Don't forget 49, fighting 49.
Never. But didn't actually Brandon do well in 49?
Brandon did well up here, and Vallis came in second, which really was a surprise. You know, I wanted to ask you, just in passing, you know, I didn't know a lot about Brandon Johnson, and I think he has some making up to do with people around town real fast. I'm wondering if you have any insight or any word you think that we know that Willie Wilson came out for Vallis, but what do you think?
Wait, I didn't know that. Did Willie come out today for Vallis?
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm pretty sure. I mean, we could check this after we get off the air, but in any event, we're wondering what Lori Lightfoot is going to do, if she'll endorse anybody, and if Chewy will endorse anybody. I think it would be a real opportunity for Chewy to push the issues, the progressive issues, and if he did come out for Brandon Johnson and talk it up some, it would be appropriate. Whether he will or not, I don't know. Any thoughts on any of that?
Well, I mean, I think there's some animosity, but Chewy is a thorough progressive, but I think there's some bad feeling because Brandon had said that he would never endorse Chewy. So
Whoa, hear that part. Phew.
yeah, so that's a stumbling block, but Chewy is bigger than that. So
Yeah.
It's my prediction that Chewy will eventually support Brandon unless he finds that in his own district that his base won't.
Yeah. Well,
I mean,
we'll go for the next week or so. Let me ask you something that Katie Hogan threw in here when she was helping out with this script. How is this moment like the Harold Washington election? How is it nothing like the Washington movement?
Well, one, as I said to Brandon's no Harold Washington. And in fact, that was after 4 years of a council that was much wider and where power was more concentrated. And people were inspired by Harold. They were on fire.
Yeah, they were.
And he came out of, and they were inspired by their own potential. They were, what really was striking to me in that campaign is once they believed that Harold was like believing in themselves and they could make the change. I don't see that kind of excitement in this race at all, particularly with 30% of folks voting and the vote split so many ways. And let me say what, as a consultant, as a media consultant to mostly issues, it is harder. If you remember, when we did Harold's campaign, I only had 4 TV stations to deal with.
Right.
No, seriously. And everybody watched the news. And so that, when we were down 13 points in the general, what we did was we bought ads on every station that Sunday night because we knew the entire city of Chicago was watching. And that brought us over the top. I mean, how do you reach people these days? How do you reach young people?
I don't know. My kids don't watch. Once in a while, they'll come in and watch the news. I'm glued to the news all the time.
Right.
And they're on social media. And one of my kids was for Brandon, and one was for Chewy.
Right. I mean,
well, other kids. I had other kids for who. My daughter, I think, also went for Brandon too. And
so young people are much more for Brandon, but they're voting this time in lower percentages than ever before. So whether or not Brandon can break through to more young people, whether or not Paul can, I'm sure he's going to, and Joe Trippi is no slouch. And, but I don't know how you reach, I mean, whenever I do anything with the media, I use 5 different forms of media for anything. And it's expensive and it's tricky.
Marilyn Katz, before we let you go, any thoughts on the aldermanic races still to be decided? And the makeup of the council. We had in the 49th, Maria Hadden Cruz, Andre Vasquez in 40. We have Andrea Clay in 46 in the lead. In the runoff, we have Lenny Mana Hoppenworth, who was a guest on the show.
Great.
In 48, running against Dunn, who some other people like. What's your take on some of this aldermanic stuff? I
think it's going to be fascinating. Whoever wins the mayoral is going to be facing a council with nearly 20 new alderpersons and at least 14 or 15 who are socialists.
Right.
So, we haven't seen this since Milwaukee in the 1920s.
Right.
So that would be really, really interesting to watch. Now, as Michael, as you and I know, socialism is a very broad term for these folks. But, and I don't know if you saw my article last week in Cranes, it is time, I've advocated this for a long time, that the council has its own power. that it becomes like Congress or like the State House, an equal partner in governing the city. So strap in and get ready for the ride.
I couldn't read your article because I couldn't open it. I wasn't subscribed. But anyhow,
I'll send it.
All right, we're going to have you back. I love talking to you, Marilyn. I'd like to see you again. One of the things that you and I share is our enthusiasm for physical fitness and body work and that kind of thing. And Katie would never forget me if I didn't mention the gift you brought into women's homes from coast to coast during the pandemic, when people couldn't go to their workout spaces. 5 times a week, you ran a Pilates class for over 2 years until you had to take a break to take care of yourself. Katie's just really grateful. I could go on and read the rest of this long paragraph.
And I love them. A whole new community that I adore.
Okay, Marilyn, we'll be talking to you in the next few days, I'm sure.
All right.
Keep up the great work and good luck with your event, Chicago Women Take Action, Saturday afternoon, 2:00 at the Temple.
You're invited.
Clark and Washington. Well, you never know. I might show up.
Good.
And I sent you an invite for Friday night, so check it out.
Good.
All right. We'll be right back with more Live from the Heartland here on the left end of your dial. Stay tuned to WLUW or to youtube.com/Heartland Media, Spotify or Google Podcasts, or even CAN TV. We'll be right back with more Live from the Heartland. Our next guest is State Representative Robyn Gabel.
I am woman, hear me roar, in numbers too big to ignore, and I know too much to go back and pretend, 'cause I've heard it all before, and I've been down there on the floor. No one's ever gonna keep me down again. Whoa, yes, I am wise, but it's wisdom born of pain. Yes, I paid the price, but look how much I gained. If I have to, I can do anything. I am strong. I am invincible. I am woman. You can bend but never break me, 'cause it only serves to make me more determined to achieve my final goal.
Hey, we're back with more Live from the Heartland for the week of March 11th. We are recording it on International Women's Day, and that's why we brought 2 women who've been very important in my life, very influential and important in a lot of people's lives. We had Marilyn Katz earlier, and now we have State Representative Robyn Gabel. She is the rep for the 18th District, and she's been in the legislature since 2010. I remember when she was holed up in a corner over on Diversity at Milwaukee, Chicago Maternity Center office, and working away for women's rights. How are you today, Robyn?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Thank you for inviting me, Michael.
You just came out of the legislature. What was going on?
Well, this week we're getting bills out of committee, so everybody is working on their priority bills, moving them in committee, and then next week they'll be on the floor, and we'll really have a better sense of what kinds of bills we're going to be passing this year.
Well, from just a lowly member of the state legislature, you are now honored with the role of the majority leader of the body. Congratulations. That's a big deal. And does it mean you're going to spend a lot more time down in the Patch or down in Springfield?
So it is an honor. It's quite an honor. Chris Welch, our speaker, appointed me to be the majority leader. So I'm like number 2 in the House. It has been wonderful. The speaker and I really see eye to eye and have similar agendas. So for me, it's a great way to be able to get our ideas and our values and the issues that are important to us on the table and in the discussions and for the most part, voted on and become policy for Illinois. So it's been very exciting. I am not in Springfield more than I was before, but I have more work to do on the weekends, and a little more. One time, the Speaker Welch said to me, "Oh yeah, we have a." I said, "Oh, so we were going to be off that week?" And he goes, "Not you, Robyn." So,
So with the withdrawal of Mike Madigan, who was the longtime Speaker of the House, with Chris Welch taking over the speakership, do you see this as a new era in Illinois politics?
it is absolutely a new era. His Speaker Welch, really, his motto is transparency, collaboration, openness, and it's very, very different than our last speaker. He really also wants to build more leaders. So we really look at people's strengths and try to put them in the best place for them in the legislature. We talk to them, see what their goals are, their own personal goals, and really try to be able to use people's strengths to have the best chamber that we can have.
State Representative Robyn Gabel, you've been around the women's movement and one of the leaders for a long, long time. We've made a lot of strides in this country for the rights of women, and now they're under fire. We have we always knew there was a fascist underbelly. It has really come to the fore. It is waking up a lot of us who thought we were on a coasting along in a progressive direction. The question of abortion rights, and with Roe versus Wade being overturned, Illinois has sort of turned into a sanctuary state for women seeking health care. I recently had Dee Gorton, who worked in SNCC, and Jane Addams, who was the National Secretary of Students for Democratic Society. They live down in Southern Illinois, and they talked about doing abortion work there when they're surrounded by Missouri, Kentucky, and Indiana. Talk a little bit about Illinois and our role now, and interference from churches, the right wing. What's the threat these days?
Well, we purposely passed laws that would make abortion still legal here in Illinois if Roe v. Wade was overturned, because we had a feeling that was coming. And Illinois did have a law which said that if Roe v. Wade's overturned, then we could go back to our original abortion laws, which would have made it illegal here. And we got rid of that. We changed the law to make sure that that wasn't going to happen. I think that we are, Illinois, we're trying to pass laws so that we can make sure that we are as open and accessible as possible to women in other states. We want to make sure that our doctors won't get prosecuted for serving women from other states. We want to make sure that women are able to come here and get the services that they need. We're, raising funds and making sure that Planned Parenthood can function and that they can provide birth control to people, because, prevention is always the best idea. So we need to make sure that everybody gets the birth control that they want as well. And there is the fear that if the law is passed nationally, Illinois would be in the same situation as other states. So it's not that we don't fear that as well, because we do. And, I think we just have to make sure that Senate and the House remain Democrat, and we don't have to deal with, or the presidency, a couple of those seats have to remain Democrat to make sure that we can keep that legal here in Illinois. It is so disheartening, though, to see it happen in so many states around us and throughout the country. Women's reproductive rights are really the basis of their ability to function in society. If they can't control their own reproduction, it really limits their abilities to be able to participate in society. I think we've gotten a little better with women's wages. And we passed a bill here a couple of years ago, which said that there had to be one of the ways to help with equal pay was that we passed a law that employers could not ask how much you made at the last job. Because what we were finding was that women would start out being paid less. And then if every job you go to, you tell them what you made at your last job, they would pay you less again than they would pay a man. So, businesses, and you've run businesses too, Michael, you have a budget, what you want to pay somebody. You should just pay what you were
I
going to
didn't pay
pay
a lot
them.
of attention, and as you know, we were always in the debt.
Yeah, right. But, you knew how much you paid a waitress. Did you say, oh, are you a man or a woman? I'm going to pay you less if you're a woman. No.
No,
Do you ask them, how much did you make at your
we
last
couldn't
job?
have got
I'm
away
gonna
with that.
No. So no businesses should be able to do that. They should just pay what they plan to pay someone.
Well, we have a certain situation in the country where the right has really gone. They control legislatures and they go for smaller elected offices. And we do know that when it's put to a popular vote, 60% of the country supports abortion. And Kansas was a great example where, they try to ban abortion, but the voters, many of them who probably voted for Trump, they came out and said, no, we want to have the right to abortion. We most recently are hearing a lot about this abortion pill that a judge in Texas, pretty conservative guy, a heavy Christian, is going to rule on. How will that affect things? And then I want to ask you about Walgreens too.
Sure. So the pill, there are a couple different kinds of pills.
Right.
So,
I don't have the details, but one of them would still be available and it still works.
yes. So if one of them becomes outlawed, there's still another one that people could take, people could take to have a medical abortion. It's not as effective it doesn't work quite as well, but it still works very well. So we could still use that pill here, but it's not surprising that they're trying to outlaw that. As soon as the abortion became illegal, everybody said, well, that's okay. We have these pills that work. Well, as soon as the right hears that, they're like, pills? Okay, well, let's get rid of those now. So it's not surprising that they came after it. It's really a shame, but it's not surprising. So luckily, we still have one more that's used for a lot of many different illnesses or different treatments. So that one cannot be outlawed. So we can continue to use that.
That's a little bit of good news.
Yeah.
The other thing was, I heard it when I was driving back from at Y in Evanston, the wonderful McGaw Y. I think you live in Evanston now. And we hear that Walgreens is not going to sell the pill in a number of states, even though federally it's legal. And this really irked me because I do like the Walgreens, that green Walgreens on Chicago Avenue in Evanston. And I don't take a lot of medication, but what I do get, I get up there usually. And I know that Walgreens is not banning in Illinois, but what's your thought about a corporation siding with the religious right and the conservative political right? What's about that? I mean, don't they expect a backlash? California already is going to cut off all dealing. The state's going to not deal with Walgreens at all.
So I was pretty surprised too, because there have been retributions against companies like that when they make those kinds of decisions. Immediately I got a call from the lobbyist from Walgreens saying, oh, we're just doing what's really required by the law, and we're not really doing anything wrong. And I'm like, okay, well, we'll look at it and we're going to monitor it and we're going to see what actually happens here. So, I think that if they really do stop providing the abortion pill and it's legal in the states, I don't know. I mean, there are consequences to doing that. And I think that there are some groups talking about doing a boycott. I think that, that's where corporations feel the pressures in their pocketbook.
Okay, we're talking with State Representative Robyn Gabel, an old friend, and I'm just going to throw a few things at you. Last week, Katie Hogan was the host, and she mentioned that Jen Walling of the Illinois Environmental Council and also a 49th Ward resident they have an anti-plastic, anti-styrofoam bill that's going to the Illinois legislature. Any report on that? Have you seen it yet? Is it in the works? What's the deal?
So Laura Fine is the state senator who's carrying it in the Senate. She said that it did not make it out of committee. I have not talked to Jen yet. Jennifer Gong-Gershowitz, the state rep, is carrying it in the House. But, you know, I do know that we have plenty of time. We still have bills that are going to be on second that we can add this issue onto as an amendment. I think that this is certainly something that interests the Green Caucus, which has so many more members than we ever had before, like almost 40 members. So it's exciting. Yeah. You know, when I first came here, we had about 12. So in 13 years, we've grown from 12 to 40. So I think that, you know, this is an issue that we've been working on for a number of years already. As you know, in the state legislature, sometimes it just takes a few years to get these bills passed. People need to hear about it, learn about it, and eventually support it.
Go ahead.
That's one of the bills that we're going to continue to be working on.
What is one or two of the gnarly issues that the legislature needs to address or plans on addressing? And
well, I got an update. Jen's bill on banning styrofoam did come out of the House committee. So it will be on the floor. It will be something we discuss. We can send it over to the Senate and they can vote on it then. It's food service containers. Still alive. It's styrofoam food service containers.
Good. I hate styrofoam.
Yeah. Well, it lasts forever.
Okay. Yeah. What are some thorny issues that should be addressed but may not be addressed?
Well, I think we're still looking at a child care tax credit, which I think will really help working families. We did a tax credit last year. I don't know if we're going to add an additional one, the child tax credit, but I think it's a good idea. I think in Europe they do this. They give family credits for having children, which really helps them, low-income families, which really helps them put food on the table for the children, clothing for the children. So I'm hoping that that's a little thorny, a little expensive, but we'll see if we can do that. Another issue that has come up is to give people on the lowest people, elderly and the disabled, get a small grant from the state, supposedly to help live on. And that has not been increased in 50 years. So that's an issue that we should look at and really try to increase the little money that they get to survive on. We're again looking at childcare, access to childcare, trying to make that affordable for low-income folks. Actually, for low-income and middle income, because it's ridiculously expensive. We're looking at a state health exchange to make healthcare more accessible and to make sure that we can control it at the state a little more. In case there's changes at the federal level, at least we'll have our own state health exchange so we can control our health insurance and our health insurance products. So that'll be good. So many issues. We're also going to be looking at homeless prevention and affordable housing. Those are if people don't have a home to live in, their lives are so much more difficult. So,
well, Robyn Gabel, you got a lot on your plate. So let me just say that a lot of people in our state are uninformed about what the legislature does and what it addresses. How do you make Springfield a little bit more relevant to people in their lives?
It's interesting because I worked at the city level as well for an alderman. And when I first got there, I was so excited to be able to do things. And then I realized that everything I wanted to do were laws that happened at the state level. So the state is really the main governmental body where most of the laws that affect us get made. So, people think it's the local level or they think it's the federal level, but it's not. It's the state level. So I know that all my colleagues send out newsletters. So I encourage you to figure out who your state rep is and get on their newsletter list. I think that, our issues are in the paper a lot, but I don't think people realize it's state government. They're just kind of looking at it and they're like, oh, well, this is happening or changes are being made to our travel abilities those are things that are done at the state level,
Well, you're doing a great job down there, and I really want to congratulate you again on becoming the majority leader. And I'm going to ask you one more thing, and I know I'm not sure how much you want to talk about it, but we have a mayoral election here in Chicago. It's like, it's I don't know how it's looking. So, and you have any thoughts on the mayoral election you want to share?
Well, I did endorse Chuy Garcia in the primary.
Yeah, I would root for Chewy too.
Yeah. I felt like he just had he had a little more experience in all levels of government and the temperament to be the mayor and the ability to do it. So I was a little disappointed that he didn't do better than he did. Now we're faced with some pretty extreme people who are very different.
Yeah.
And I think we have a pretty clear choices. I'm not quite ready to endorse. I'm sure, I may soon, but
That wouldn't be Vallis though.
very unlikely, very unlikely. So, yeah, I mean, it's going to be very interesting. I think that, a lot of the people have made their choice between Brandon Johnson and Vallis. And it's the people who voted for other folks that we're looking at to see which direction they're going to go in.
Yeah,
A lot of the Black community went with Lightfoot, and a number of the Latinos went with Garcia. So it's going to be interesting to see where they line up and where we end up in this.
Well, Robyn Gabel, you've been a wonderful person to have on the show again. It's been a while. And is there anything that I didn't ask you that you want to share or talk about, or any parting words of enthusiasm or warning? Give us a shot here.
Yeah, I think we have a new day in Springfield. We have a new day of openness, and I encourage you all to participate, to come down, to visit, to let us know what you think about different issues and different bills. We are incredibly interested in what you have to say, and it's just a great time to be in Springfield right now. We have an amazing governor and a great president of the Senate and Speaker of the House. It is an amazing time to be here and to be able to really do the best we can to improve people's lives in the state. So thank you for inviting me. And I look forward to attending your photography show. I always love your photographs. They are fantastic. And thank you.
Comrade sister, I want to thank you very much for coming on the show. You really are good. You've really come a long way. And the women's movement and the human movement needs you and all the good work that you do.
Thank you.
So thank you so much, Robyn. We'll see you real soon.
Take care.
Okay. You are listening to the Live from the Heartland show. You may be watching it. You can get us a lot of different ways. We're going to take a quick musical break, and we'll be right back with a little finale. Don't go too far from the left end of your dial here on WLUW.
We shall go forth from this place, proud of the things we've done, sharing the things we've won. We shall not fail, and we shall go forth from this place, willing to open wide, sharing the light inside. We shall not fail, bringing together all we know for others who are struggling alone, bringing together all we know.
Well, we're back with Live from the Heartland. That's the show for the week of March 11th. I want to really thank our guests, both Marilyn Katz and State Representative Robyn Gabel. It is International Women's Day that we're recording this on, and the show is for the week of March 11th. I had a photo opening last night, and I'm speaking of now in the future because we record on Wednesday, but on Friday night, my show called Crossing Borders, photos of both Nicaragua, Cuba, and Mexico from 1962 to 2018, opened at Yuri Eichen. I assume it went really well. And you can go see that show by appointment by contacting the gallery, or there's a closing reception on April 7th. And these are some really beautiful photos, if I do say so myself. I'm not sure who we have on next week, but I have booked John Melrod in April for his new book, Fighting Times, Organizing on the Front Lines of the Class War. And he was up in Kenosha and Racine doing work in, I think, an auto plant. Got his book. I'm going to read it. Also, I was contacted by a rep for Anna Castillo, who is a former neighbor in Uptown, who is got a new book out, and she's quite a celebrity these days. And she's going to be coming on. I want to remind people that you can, and spread the word on this, you can listen to the show on Saturday mornings. It's also streamed on Saturday mornings on our home base, WLUW. That's 88.7 or FM or WLUW.org. It also goes up usually on Friday nights at youtube.com/Heartland Media. On Saturdays, it's on Google and Spotify podcast. And a week from now, it's on CAN TV, I think channel 21. You know, it's pretty serious out there in the world. There's a lot of things going on, right? The most important thing for people living in Chicago is really get behind the best aldermanic candidate in your ward and make a good choice on who you vote for mayor. I'll be frank, we really don't want Paul Dallas in after what he did to our schools and schools a lot of other places. So it's an interesting time, and you can all play a part. We encourage you to do real good in the world, because the world needs all the good that you do, that I do, that we do together. All power to the people. Have a great week. We'll see you next week. Do good.
Are you doing the best you can? Over the mountain, under the big blue sky, you got a dream awaiting. I can see it in your eye. It may not come easy, but you know you've got a friend. I'll be by your side the entire ride. Just let me hear you say amen. Are you doing? Are you doing the best you can? Tell me, are you doing? Are you doing the best you can? Tout donne, est-ce que tu donnes le meilleur de toi-même parce que tu l'aimes? Tu donnes, est-ce que tu donnes le meilleur de toi-même si tu l'aimes? Tu donnes, est-ce que tu donnes le meilleur de toi-même quand tu l'aimes? Are you doing the best you can? Tell me, are you doing?